Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Georgiana Oliarik, and I am the Frederick S. Eaton Curator of Canadian Art. And along with Wanda Nunnabush, who is the Curator of Indigenous Art, we co-lead the Indigenous and Canadian Art Department here at the Art Gallery of Ontario. We have a very unique structure. When Wanda and I conceived the department, actually 6 years ago this fall, we wanted to honor the core values of the peace and friendship treaties of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee. And at the very heart of these treaties is the notion of sharing land, sharing power, sharing responsibilities, sharing all the joy and the pain that comes along. Very importantly for us, the core principles of these treaties have these values, and we actually wrote these values at the very entry of the J.S. McLean Centre of Indigenous and Canadian Art. And that, I think, was really a historic moment in the history of this institution, because these values were stated not just for us in our department, and the way that we think that we work together is that we work separately, we work together, but we always work in relationship with one another. But indeed they are for the organization as a whole. And that indeed we hold that the First Nations hold title to their lands, and that the AGO will act on the principles outlined in those treaties of mutual respect, sharing, non-interference, honest dealings, and actions that have integrity. The Mccready lecture was always very special for me, but it became extra special because the very first event that Wanda and I hosted was the Mccready lecture in 2018, and the speaker that evening was Heather Igloliorti. The Mccready lecture is in honor of Philip Mccready, who was a well-known and very highly respected dealer in Canadian art. And in 1981, when he died, a group of friends and colleagues got together to create a fund that would support a lecture here at the Art Gallery of Ontario. And over the more than 20 years that the series has been going, we have welcomed many scholars and artists and curators that focused on Canadian and Indigenous art. And today, this evening, is a very great honor. I am so very pleased that the 2023 Mccready lecturer is Rosalie Favell. The lecture is in conjunction with her exhibition, Portraits of Desire, that's on view downstairs in the McLean Centre, an exhibition that will be on view until April 2024. And this part I'm going to read because it is her very wonderful and long and highly accomplished bio, and I want to make sure that everything is just right. So, Rosalie Favell is a distinguished Métis artist with a creative practice that spans over 40 years, who has achieved national and international acclaim. Favell has used photography, portraiture, and painting to understand and represent her ancestry and identity in works that have been exhibited and collected nationally and internationally. Drawing inspiration from her family history and Métis Red River heritage, she uses a variety of sources, from family albums to popular culture, to present a complex self-portrait of her experiences as a contemporary Indigenous woman. Rosalie explores cultural entanglements, the challenges of representation, and themes of empowerment and identity. Her work focuses on her lived experiences as a Métis 2SLBTQ woman, merging aspects of Métis identity, gender, heritage, and elements of popular culture. And I think this is how I first got to know. In fact, Rosalie was one of the very few Indigenous artists that was taught in art history when I went to school in the 90s. I know, crazy. But to return. As someone who has influenced from the beginning. As someone who has influenced generations of Indigenous and non-Indigenous artists, Rosalie is a leading figure in contemporary Indigenous art and photography. Over the course of her long career, she has won prestigious awards such as the Paul de Hewick Norman Walford Career Achievement Award, the Karsh Award, and an honorary doctorate from UCAD-U. Numerous institutions have acquired her artwork, including the Indigenous Art Centre in Gatineau, National Gallery of Canada in Ottawa, and the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. Please welcome Rosalie Favell.
Hi, thank you all for being here and for the warm welcome. And it was kind of long, I apologize. I would like to thank everyone at the AGO who's been involved in having me here and doing the exhibition and having me here for the Mccready lecture. And Wanda Nanabush, who first reached out to me and connected with me about the exhibition and the lecture. I wish she could be here with us, but we'll send her the video so she'll get to see it. Okay, I need a drink. So I'm going to take you way back. So well, not this far back, but my photography practice started in the 70s, and I fell in love with documentary photography. I studied at what is now the Toronto Metropolitan University in the 80s, and I was assigned to document a situation. And I chose to look at a lesbian family, two incredible feminists that were raising their daughters in a rural setting. And I was welcomed into their home to witness their everyday lives. I went numerous times to observe and to make photos, and I essentially became a fly in the wall. I was looking for new role models of what a family was for women like me. I also identified and connected with the one daughter whose skin color was closer to mine. And although it was a study of them, it brought into question who I was. And I was proud to make this lifestyle visible. I called it Family Circle. And this was also the time frame when the first gay and lesbian pride marches happened in Toronto, in part in response to the bathhouse raids and the fight for the right to live our lives out in the world. Then back in the 80s, I made a series which I called Portraits in Blood, and it focused on women from the Indigenous community in Winnipeg. And I was confused as to how I fit into being Indigenous, or back then, Native. I had been told that I had Indigenous blood. I was told I had Indian blood. And I wanted to meet with these women and ask them about being Indigenous. I wanted to know if these were my people in my community. And in the process, I did meet and develop a community of friends and elders, and I was welcomed into the Indigenous community. But I hadn't connected yet with being Métis. This monitor isn't on down here. I don't know. So, that's why I can't see it down there. So in the early 90s, I made a series that I called Living Evidence, and it combined image and text in reworked Polaroids to depict a relationship that had ended. This was significant for many reasons. Technically, I'd never defaced a photograph before. I copied my Polaroids and I made them large so I could write across them. But I was also taking a big step by outing myself and revealing my emotions while reflecting on a passionate relationship with an Indigenous woman. As much as it was exposing myself, it also caused ripples in the gallery world. And to protect the identity of my former love, I was compelled to obscure her identity. So I put black tape across her eyes, which was another layer of defacing that was really difficult for me. Apparently, it was dangerous to publicly express my love for another woman in the early 90s. In keeping my identity revealed, though, I stepped forward into the spotlight, which set off making self-portraits, and I continued to look for who I was. My parents told me I was Métis. I really wasn't sure what that meant other than the color of my skin. And it was a starting point that launched me further into searching. And in this series I called From an Early Age, it explores through slides and snapshots my awareness of my skin color. And although it's created early in my career, the series explores many concerns that are still in my practice. I utilize the same convention of writing my thoughts across the images. And I started to examine the background through searching snapshots that my parents, primarily my mother, had taken of the family in the early 60s. I looked at my family album, hoping it would reveal clues about my identity. My love of photographs and photography started early. Whenever the camera appeared, I started running towards it. Or maybe it was the person that was taking the picture. Probably both. I also loved looking at photographs. My parents valued their world and wished to share special moments just by pointing them out. Family snapshots, photo albums, and evenings spent projecting slides set the stage for my love of looking. This work, I get a chuckle out of it, because when I made this work, I wrote assimilation, and it wasn't until later that I realized I wrote a simulation. And then I thought, well, a simulation is futile. But, so I don't know if that's which one that is. So I made it again. I like it both ways. But then I think that both ways are relevant, because it was my first day of kindergarten, and I was learning how to be a student, but also situating it within the context of the colonial process and what going to school meant. So I was learning to spell and reflecting on my awareness and understanding of the history of colonization. So I went back to this photograph once I started painting. And I've been a photographer for over 40 years. It's been my passion. And with the recent changes in technology, the disappearance of the darkroom and the machinations that one goes through to produce a final print, I turned to painting. I had never painted before, and I just wanted to see if I could. And I was hopeful that I can continue to work creatively in this medium and explore my Métis heritage. And I started painting from photographs from my family's archive of snapshots. These were taken by my parents, siblings, friends. Most of the images have me in them, surprise. And by revisiting these photographs of the past, I can again explore how identity is created and recreated through many different contexts, events, and communities. And I'm able to infuse the static photograph with memories, real and desired, and create images in a manner that I have always worked as an amalgam of fact and fiction. So through painting, I challenge my engagement with subject matter, and I deepen my inquiries into their significance through an extended creative process. Mostly, I really missed the darkroom, and I missed that moment of being in the dark alone and the magic of seeing that image appear. And I guess tiring of working on the computer, and although there's magic there, sure, I don't understand that magic, but there's something about going to painting that allowed me to stay in that work and in that moment and trip out, I guess, I've really been enjoying it. But my paintings that I paint are from my photographs, mostly my older photographs. So I just skipped a whole bunch here, but it's deepened my inquiries into their significance through an extended creative process that contests the instantaneity. I should have Googled how to say this. How instant photographs are. Sounded good when I read it to myself. Most importantly, the process of reworking images complements how I've always treated my subject matter, especially issues of identity, which I see rooted in histories and traditions, but also adaptable to flex. Okay. All of this to get to a series that I called Longing and Not Belonging. And I began taking real photos as a child on a camera my sister gave me. And it was unlike today's cell phone cameras that are easily available and made picture taking so simple that infants can do it now, or your cat or whatever. Like anyone could take a picture now. But the mystery of the roll of film that you loaded into the camera was equal to the thrill and surprise of opening the envelope of prints that came from the camera shop. But I became more intentional in my picture taking when I was a teenager, and the camera gave me a way to interact with the world from a distance. I hid behind the viewfinder, and I was able to safely observe the world with detachment and try to make sense of it. It was not until much later that I realized I'd been looking for acceptance and seeing my place in my family and my family photographs, and they brought me home to myself. My searching for clues to my identity grew from and it was informed by the snapshots of my family's and of my own. My fascination and love of family snapshots has held my attention my entire life. I realize that I'm very privileged to have negatives and prints from my parents and grandparents, and this family archive feeds my spirit. I feel a responsibility to keep my family alive through my mining and representing them. The history of the Métis is complex and perplexing, even for many Métis individuals. And through my process of working with my family's archive, I've been able to work through this history, situating myself in the simple context of the family. Longing and Not Belonging continues this inquiry of my family snapshots by investigating similarities between the family photo album and the 19th century Ledger Plains warrior art. So this work also initiated the realization of heroes in my life, strong women. In Longing and Not Belonging, I explored the similarities between the family photo album and the ledger art. Okay, this work also, I'm repeating myself. So I started to, basically, I would say, what do I do with these hundreds of photos? People don't have that issue now because they have them on their phone, but I had boxes and I put them under my bed. And so I pulled them all out and I started putting them together and looking at these, creating these visual sentences. And this is my grandmother, my nanny, who you'll see in many of my works. And just kind of that circular fashion, like a traffic circle where no matter where you go, there you are, but you keep going around in the generational stuff. Okay. I was stuck with what to photograph at a certain point, and someone asked me what I was passionate about. I was like, I don't know what to take pictures of. But the first thing that came to mind was Xena Warrior Princess. That's what I was passionate about. So that was my life. And for those who are younger and don't know who that is, ask your grandparents. No, just kidding. Sorry. Let's see. So I decided that I would become my own warrior hero. And I called this series The Plains Warrior Artist, alluding back to the ledger art that warriors made. And I still struggled to find my place in the world, and I went off and searching out situations. Instead of looking, okay. My love and passion for the cultural icon Xena Warrior Princess inspired me to create and transform into a Métis Plains warrior artist. My work has always been diaristic and serial in nature, and I took a step further and situated myself within the context of the Plains ledger art. I fashioned my character based, upon the fictional character of Xena, although she seemed really real to me. And my character, my warrior artist, was born. I'm gonna, was that the painting one? Yeah, okay. So when I started, actually this was my first, one of my first works that I made, and I didn't know, but you could put your head on somebody else's body. And you got to remember, this is over 20 years ago, okay? Like 24 years ago. And and I didn't know how to use Photoshop. I barely knew how to use the computer. But I had a very patient friend who taught me how to put my head on Zena's body. So, but after that, I decided I better make my own outfit. And, well, this is me in a transformation. It's based on, is this the painting? Yeah, and then the painting. I recently started revisiting. I love this work. I love Zena. And for me, going back to the work from 1999 to 2003 seemed really important and significant to me. And as I mentioned, the act of painting and looking at the work and being in that space, I really felt it necessary to do that. I'm going to skip. I'm trying to be academic here with my papers, but I could really just chatter on. But yeah, so in paper dolls, I kind of relying a little on the stereotypical ideas. I kind of looked, okay, I couldn't find a Métis paper doll, so I had to go with a Plains indigenous girl, yeah. So my work shows how self-representation incorporates desired and imaginary roles, as well as elements that have occurred in the past. There's elephants going to be in my next one. As a Métis woman, I have crafted my self-portraits to become a modern explorer, engaging in acts perhaps never imagined by past generations. I see Indigenous peoples as engaging in many new explorations and entering territories that will prove challenging. I also see this situation as not without its contradictions. It is a very uncertain space that proves exciting to artistic practice. In my self-portraits, I strive to articulate the complexities of Aboriginal or Indigenous identity through humor and ambiguity. I awoke to find my spirit had returned. I wake up as Dorothy, just returning from Oz. Dorothy followed the yellow brick road to make her way home, and I was traveling the red road searching for my way home. In the image, I'm covered with Hudson's Bay trade blanket. This is referencing my family's fur trading history, but it's also referencing the disease-infested blankets that were given to Indigenous people during the colonization process. The wizard standing in the window is Louis Riel, who reputedly said, "My people will sleep for 100 years, and when they awake, the artist will give them their spirit back." What a difference 100 years makes. Louis Riel was the leader of the Métis resistance and defender of mixed heritage people. And I awoke to find my spirit had returned speaks to both Métis and personal experiences, referencing The Wizard of Oz and featuring Métis leader Louis Riel. And the work expresses the desire to go home while at the same time questioning where home is. Oh, and here's the painting. The message of The Wizard of Oz is that there's no place like home. Everything we need is right inside of us, and all roads lead to home. My home is my family. My road is to be true to our people and uphold our pride and self-respect. If you notice the difference on the photograph, I added my little dog in the bed. So everyone needs their Toto with them. So this is If Only You Could Love Me the Way I Am. Take off on the Frida Kahlo painting and cut off all my hair and say, Frida Kahlo said, "See if you can love me now that I'm ugly." But for me, it was dealing with gender issues and self-acceptance. And I did the painting. Okay, and Hollywoodland shaman. Okay, so this was really inspired by Zena. She, as a shamaness, went to the underworld to fight evil. But for me, just that play on Hollywood and Hollywoodland, the woodland style of painting, those are Norval Morisseau's woodland style flowers, and that's my Xena doll I'm holding in front of me. I've like a Barbie. Oh, forget Barbie. I had a Xena doll, you know. Yeah. And this one is a longer story, but I think I have time. Yeah. This is about the Children's Hour, the Lillian Hellman film from 1961. And when I saw the film, I watched movies all the time, Sunday afternoon, parents aren't there, and watching this movie, and there was something about it. And the quick gist of the movie is that a little girl in the girls' school says that she saw her teachers kissing these two women, and the parents take them out of school, and their lives fall apart. And in the process, the Shirley MacLaine character says, maybe I do love you that way, you know. And then the parents knock at the door, and the little girl's there they're saying she lied, you know. In the meantime, Shirley MacLaine's upstairs hanging herself. And I think this was written as a play in the 30s. But for me, as a young preteen or teenage girl, I knew there was something about this movie that maybe I didn't understand or that had resonance for me. But one of the little girls, not the one who told, was named Rosalie. Maybe it was just that. Maybe it was just that simple. But looking back, it felt bigger than that. Oh, did I skip one? Okay. So this is the 1822 painting by American collector Charles Wilson Peale. And he's inviting you into his museum and he collected skeletal remains of animals. But for me, I've discovered it, and it spoke to me about Indigenous people claiming back the museum space or gallery space. So to disrupt the colonial view and to honor my ancestors, I included aspects of my cultural heritage. So basically, I took my parents' photo album and put them into the museum, and I'm welcoming you into my space, and I'm controlling my space. There's no bones of my ancestors in there, but there's photographs that I'm choosing to show you. This one, I made it as a photograph, and then I did the painting, and I thought, I'm going to make myself slimmer than in his photograph. Enough of this putting my head on this old man's body. So I trimmed up, and I thought, I want a purple coat. So I made the purple coat. I kept myself young, but no, doesn't have to be too real. So let's see. I'll just keep going. This is for my best beloved sister. My nanny, who's my paternal grandmother, left my family a powerful legacy through her extensive collection of photographs that depict Indigenous experience from an Indigenous point of view. And I share my grandmother's love of photography and her desire to be photographed. My work pays tribute to her continued presence in my life, as well as acknowledges her strength and sense of adventure. I was 18 when my nanny died at age 80, and she left her family an abundance of photographs of family and friends organized in albums. Some images appear like postcards as they are mementos of her travels, and the sentiment of notes written and sent home express what I imagined she wished for the receiver of the card. She wished they were there to share her experience. And, in this series, I called it Wish You Were Here, and expresses both her sentiments and mine for her. In order to create a conversation with my grandmother and her past experiences, I combined photographs that she had taken with contemporary photographs of those places, or as close that I could get to those places. And by merging the two photographs, I expressed my desire to see my grandmother's portraits in the context of contemporary images. I see my series as paying tribute to her continued presence in my life, as well as acknowledging her sense of adventure and her strength. And she lives inside me in my memory, and I celebrate and continue my nanny's vision, proudly sharing my culture and history with a wider audience. My nanny's photographs have been especially inspiring. What I remember of her is childhood memories mixed with, of course, the innocence of childhood, but she treasured her family photographs and keeping them in albums that kept her company until her last days. And I discovered them decades after she was gone. Yet I'm still passionate about looking at them. And I'm searching then to understand her and the complexities of the time she lived in. And these albums are everything to me. They speak to me about who I am, my family, my heritage, but more, they're part of the history of an area that we all shared and called home. And images from my family's albums, from both my parents and both sets of grandparents, indicate the rich history of my part of the universe. In this series I did, Closer to Heaven, it depicts my father's life in the Interlake region in Manitoba. And I wanted to create a series about my dad. And I looked through all the photo albums that I could access. And I wanted them of when he was small, but there was always his darn older brother that was there. So I made it about the two of them. That's what you do with siblings, no? But they had a bond that tied them together from birth, and this bond lasted a lifetime, and so much so that they passed away a week apart. And a week later, being the diligent artist, I went off to do an artist talk, and I was in the plane flying, and all I could see was I looked out and saw the clouds and thought I was closer to them in heaven. So I later made this work. I do all these cloud photos out of the plane, and I felt I was closer to my dad and my uncle. So I don't know how much you may know about Metis script, but I had to learn a lot of this. I did a body of work where I studied up, and so the history in the Red River area runs deep. My Cree grandmother met an English fur trader in the late 1700s, and my family's legacy started. The Métis, a distinct people, began when Louis Riel defended those mixed Indigenous and European heritage in the Red River. This proud generation of people changed over the years from a defeated generation and then a shamed generation, which was my grandparents' generation. And the next generation of my fathers was the hidden one. And my generation's the lost generation. The present generation of my nieces and nephews are the found generation. And I'm humbled by their growing appreciation of my journey and my efforts to illuminate our heritage and the way for their children to come. So I took these are actual documents that I was able to access through Library and Archives Canada. So these are the actual pieces of paper that my great-grandparents touched. And although they, in most cases, just put an X on the paper as they signed away their land. And that's what this image is about. So what you saw previous was the script affidavit, so they had to sign kind of like a contract that said they will take 160 worth of these certificates, script certificates. And then people with money were standing next to the Indian agent and said, you give me that useless piece of paper and I'll give you cash. And that's how our land was stolen. I had that written down, but I won't read it. So holding her ground is my grandmother. Although she grew up, and my father, in the north of Winnipeg, along Lake Winnipeg. Winnipeg being that gathering place that everyone from the north, historically gathered in Winnipeg. And so she is laying her claim to that land very fashionably. No. And my mother was her background, her family was part of the people who came to settle the West. So, it's very complex, this whole, how it all works together. But so she grew up on a farm, so horses were part of her life. And I've been looking at these old photos, and there's so many horse shots. That's my dad on his hands and knees with my sister and brother on his back playing horsey, and there's all different kinds. Farm horses, the kind that somebody comes to you in the city with a horse and asks if they want your children's picture taken on it. But a lot of the ones in the series I call Family Legacy are about mobility. And my father kept the brochures from his cars that he bought. So this one's a Falcon, and the snapshots are of us on a family road trip in our Falcon. This is me in my plane. No, just, what is it? Wing, whatever, riding. So the image in the center my nanny had, and we're not really sure who that is in the photo by the plane, but just, again, the pontoons and the lake being such a big part of her life. And this is my parents, again, the photographer on the street who says, "Do you want your picture taken?" And so in this one, I have the DNA bars talking about genetics, memories, both sets of my father's parents on one side and my mother's on the other side, and the script document in the back. And they're walking through time here. This is how I do beadwork. No, I can't do beadwork, but I found these fingerprint DNA graphics, and I thought, oh, they look like beadwork, and I'll put them around. And so both sets of grandparents, and I actually took these photos rather than from the albums. This is, I did a small video, I think that was here at one point in a group show, and it's called Blow, and it's got 100 or more snapshot images of blowing out birthday cake candles, and I just like that ritual, that celebration of life, but the passing of time and death, and I just thought it was fun. This is my older sister there, and that's her with her grandchildren. So, and that was an installation of our slideshow. And I guess, what am I doing now? I like this. My heads are in the clouds. No, my head is in the clouds. I'm still working on painting and just really enjoying that space where I can be with the past, with the present, with the oils, with the color, and still working on pictures of me. But yeah. So with that, I'll end, and I'm not sure what our timing is, but if there's any questions, I think we have time to field a few questions. But thank you for coming and spending your Friday night here. I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed the exhibition and enjoyed the talk. So thank you.
If you have any questions, just raise your hand and we'll bring you a mic. We're recording tonight.
Hi, that was amazing. Loved it. My question is, you said that reworking images brings you closer to the subject matter and to yourself. Would you say that you found yourself through your journey?
I think I found a version of myself. One that I'm comfortable with. I'm no longer uncomfortable in my own skin. I used to be very uncomfortable as a child and a young person about the color of my skin and who am I, where do I come from. And no, I'm kind of happy now. Yeah, but I'm open to whoever I become, so change. It's important to change. Thank you. There's a question up front. Oh, there's a question there, and then up front here.
Just wait for the microphone. Thank you. Your comment about the level, the generations, and you as the lost generation, and the found, it made me cry. And I'm glad I had a handkerchief. How are you doing now? You seem fine. How about your generation?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, it's taken my life of working through issues and finding proof through photographs, and the way my grandmother was standing tall and holding her ground. I like to feel that I'm doing that for my generation and really for my future, and not just my family, but for all young people, old people like myself. No, yeah, I think that I'm in a good place. Very happy to be here, and very grateful for the privilege that I've had in my life to be able to do this and to have the wealth of photographs and memories and family. So yeah, I'm good. Thank you. I saw a question over here in the hecklers. No.
The heckle section.
Yes.
In addition to this amazing body of work, you didn't talk about something that's very unique in your practice, is the work that you did with facing the camera and documenting over 500 Indigenous artists globally. Can you talk about that?
No, just kidding. Okay. It was so hard to figure out what to show in 40 minutes, and I was trying to tie into passion, and although I do feel passionate about 500 artists and curators of Indigenous varieties. Yeah, in 2008, I was at the Banff Center for a Residency, and I was kind of late to the party and thought, what am I going to do? I like photographing people. I'll do some portraits of all of the other Indigenous artists here, and so I did that. And afterwards, I thought, that was kind of, gee, I've never met that Alex Janvier before. That's really cool. So I just thought I wanted to carry this on, and I wanted to represent the community and meet people. I wanted to meet people instead of looking at my navel or my computer or my, So I just started taking pictures when people would come to visit in Ottawa and at different gatherings and then different residencies. And 10 years later, there was 500 portraits, and they're momentary moments that I met people sometimes for the first time, spent all of 4 minutes with them, other ones that I'd known for a lifetime, it seems like. And then I have had a break for 5 years, and just recently with the Block Museum in Evanston, Illinois, I started it up again for that residency. So I'm not sure if I'll carry on, but when I started doing the first portraits in 2008, I didn't know that I'd be doing it for 10 years either. So yeah, I'm thrilled to, some of those people in the photographs have passed on. I'm thrilled to have met them. And my hope and intention is that people could see the diverse range of people, incredible people in the art community, Indigenous artists, curators, and although my portraits don't tell you much about them other than who they are and where I took the picture, that hopefully you'll investigate and search. Thank you, Ryan. Anybody else out there? Okay.
Hello, thank you for a really cool talk. I'm really glad I got to hear you speak. So there's one thing that I thought was really cool and that surprised me a little bit was the Xena Warrior Princess bit. I was really surprised and excited in a good way to hear about that. To pull from something like media that is public and popular, and find something really personal in it that you can work with in the future and make something so very rich and personal out of it. I don't, it's an extremely directionalist question, but I would really love to hear a little bit more about that and how that compares with representing and learning about yourself through like personal family archives versus media, paper dolls, movies, things like that. Like, how are they like similar and how are they different? Maybe is what I'm trying to get at.
Okay. Well, The Plains Warrior was really getting me out of my shell in a lot of ways. I'm very shy, I know you can't tell, and although I like having my picture taken, but to play, to kind of play dress up, and then within that dressing up and trying on different roles, kind of finding yourself a bit more. And so it was a creation process of creating a fictional character, but then owning the parts that had meaning for me, and then carrying that on through the work, so that although I don't put little pictures of me as Zina in all of my current work. That's a good idea. No, she is there. She's there. I'm not sure that I will do more direct self-portraits. I kind of like myself 25 years younger. No, just kidding. But I certainly I'm still willing to take on roles as they come up for me. So I'm still not opposed to dressing up, you know. But I don't know if that touches anything on what you're. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, there's one over there.
Thank you very much for the lecture. You're inspiring. I was really curious about your perspective when you first heard about, the announcement there's going to be a Truth and Reconciliation Day. I know that's just 2 weeks away, but just curious of what your first thought was, and was that meaningful to you?
Yeah, it's definitely meaningful, and a time for reflection, time for some action, and, a lot of respect and caring, and, I guess a little perplexing as to how to, it's not a day to celebrate. It's not like, what is it? Is it activating in your own life and the people around you, making this known? I am doing a discrete project with someone about residential schools, but there's so many photographs, but they're not mine to work with or to deal with, or, so it's something that I feel deeply about, and trying to make sense of what to do, and how to honor these children and the families. Yeah, it's very, very challenging. It presents a similar challenge for me, as I'm sure for everyone out there, so, yeah. Anybody else? Oh. I feel like the scout here. What?
Hi, Rosalie.
Hi.
You talked a little bit in your presentation about how some of your early photographs have reappeared as paintings. And in the exhibition here, we see a number of paintings that began as photographs. And I took your point about missing the dark room with the development of photography and challenging yourself with a new medium. I heard the comments you made about some of the details you added or subtracted, But I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about the extent to which the core meaning of the works is, if not changed, modified by virtue of a change in medium. Is that significant as we look at the photographs and the paintings together? For example, The Collector or your take on The Wizard of Oz and so on. Is there something deeper we should be thinking about in terms of a kind of subtle shift of meaning as medium changes?
Yeah, I guess I would want you to think about why I did. It's a really good, yeah. Although the work is certainly defined from the Plains Warrior artist, how a lot of people know about me and my work, I felt in some ways it wasn't finished speaking to people. I wasn't finished, I guess, looking at it. And for me, there's still a lot in the images that have meaning beyond what my initial thoughts were when I put the work together, and certainly the context of the times today. I can't completely replicate what the photograph is, and that's okay. I'm trying to let go of the past now. The photographs, it's hard at a certain point. You do have to let go of kind of my own disappointment that I can't make it look exactly like, but I'm happy with where it goes. And part of, as much as it's about painting, and I wanted to know if I could paint and I enjoy the process, part of it is about, I want immortality. That whole, I'm very passionate about photographs, but they don't last forever. And why is that? That we have the technology. Like, why do photographs that we print today fade? Why do our memories fade? Well, maybe it's good that they fade because maybe we shouldn't remember everything that's in those photographs. When I go through the galleries and see the old masters and those paintings, it still look, I don't know what they looked like back then because I don't think I was there, but that the color is so incredible, and the surface is there, and there's something that is there seemingly forever. And so there must be isn't there a song, I Want to Live Forever? No. So, there's something about the painting that is still very new to me, and I'd be happy to have 40 years of painting ahead of me, but in the meantime, I want my work to last longer. There is something about the legacy that I want my family's images to be there. I want them to be made visible, my family and our history, and I would happily step aside from being the center of the image so that they could live on longer. So I don't know if that helps, Leslie, but yeah, thanks.
We have time for one more question.
I just wanted to say Chimigwech for such a beautiful lecture. I feel like I could have listened to you for hours.
Well, stay. We're going to rent the room. No, just kidding.
I just had a question about how you thought about the DNA with the photographs of your grandparents, just sort of like mirroring beadwork, because seeing that, I've just never seen anything like that, and it was such a beautiful healing image, and I was just wondering how that process came about.
Well, when I was looking at, the ancestry sort of part, and I worked in medical photography for 5 years, and I did a lot of DNA photos back before digital. I would get a roll of film from radiology, and there were pictures that to me looked like minestrone soup, but thankfully to the doctors, they meant something. So I was just, I spent a lot of time looking at, and so when I started looking at my family history and genealogy, and then just looking at graphics, and I mean, I don't draw, so I was borrowing heavily from the internet, but it just sort of they struck me, that the circular ones, that they look like beads and look like, I wish I could bead a frame, but I can't, but I can put these beautiful, just graphic images around there. Yeah.
Thank you all for coming, and please join me in thanking Rosalie for her work and for her talk this evening.
Thank you. Thank you.